The birthday cake had 43 candles. I lit every single one. Cut perfect slices. Served them on the good china that belonged to my grandmother. Cleaned the frosting off their fingers with paper towels I bought with my own money. And when Mrs. Henderson from next door squinted at me through her glasses and asked if I was the new housekeeper, my dad laughed. That deep, hearty laugh he saved for moments when he thought something was genuinely funny. "She's just helping out," he said, not even looking at me. His voice carried across the dining room like I wasn't standing right there. Poor thing doesn't have much else going on anyway. I was holding his empty beer bottle. The third one of the evening. Still wearing the flowered apron my mother had bought me 15 years ago. Still smiling. Still invisible to my name is Daisy. I'm 33. And I've stayed quiet for long enough. The dining room looked like something from a magazine. Gold. Balloons I'd driven to 3 different stores to find. Streamers that matched the tablecloth I'd ironed twice. Food I'd spent 6 hours preparing while Lucas played Call of Duty upstairs, his laughter echoing through the house every time he killed someone. When his college friends started arriving at 7, they handed me their coats without a word. Designer jackets, expensive scarves, the kind of clothes I window shopped for but never bought. I took them. Hung them in the hall closet next to Dad's old work jackets that still smelled like motor oil. Came back with a silver tray of bacon-wrapped scallops that had cost me $40, my grocery budget for a week. "These are incredible," said Tyler, Lucas's roommate. He was tall, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than my rent. "Did you cater this?" Before I could answer, Mom appeared with her perfect hostess smile. "Oh no. Daisy made everything. She's so good with domestic things." Domestic things. Like I was an appliance they'd inherited, Lucas emerged from upstairs. In a new button-down shirt, a birthday gift from Dad, looking relaxed and grateful. Everyone gathered around him, drinks in hand, voices getting louder. I stood by the kitchen doorway with a garbage bag, collecting empty bottles and crumpled napkins. The kitchen counter was covered with dirty pans, mixing bowls, the aftermath of my 6-hour performance. "Should we sing happy birthday?" someone asked. "Let me get the camera," Mom said, rushing to find her phone. I watched from my spot by the doorway as they formed a circle around the cake. Lucas's face glowed in the candlelight. Everyone sang. I mouthed the words, but no one was looking at me anyway. When he blew out the candles, everyone cheered and clapped. I took pictures with my phone too, but not of the celebration I photographed. The wine ring on Grandma's mahogany table. The cheese ground into the Persian rug Dad was so proud of. The cigarette ash someone had flicked into my mother's favorite crystal bowl. The broken champagne flute hidden behind the curtain. Evidence of their carelessness. Proof of who really took care of everything. "Leave the cleanup to Daisy," Mom announced when Tyler offered to help with dishes. "She's so good with cleaning. Honestly, I don't know what we'd do without her." The guests started leaving around 11. Hugs for Lucas, promises to get together soon. A few polite nods in my direction. "Thanks for dinner," Tyler said on his way out. He handed me his empty beer bottle like I was a waitress. When the door closed behind the last guest, the house felt quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher I'd already loaded twice. Dad was in his recliner, channel surfing. Mom was packing leftover cake into Tupperware. Lucas was upstairs, probably back to his video games. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of their celebration, and opened my phone. Scrolled through the photos I'd taken. The damage. The mess. The careless destruction of things that mattered to me, even if they didn't matter to anyone else. They didn't know I was documenting everything. And I didn't plan to stop. I was 9. When I learned what invisible meant. It was a Tuesday after school, and I came home to find Lucas on the couch with a brand new PlayStation, the box still open on the coffee table. Mom was sitting beside him, helping him set it up, her face bright with the kind of excitement she usually reserved for Christmas morning. "Where's mine?" I asked, dropping my backpack by the door. Mom glanced up, distracted. Where's your what? Honey. My present. Lucas got a PlayStation. Oh, sweetie. Her voice had that patient tone adults use when they're about to explain something disappointing. This isn't just because a present. Lucas has been working so hard in school. Lucas had gotten a C+ on his math test the week before. I'd gotten an A on mine. But I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding my report card in my sweaty palm, watching my little brother figure out how to connect the controllers. Besides, Mom continued, you got something too. There's a new steps tool in the kitchen. Now you can reach the sink properly. The steps tool was wooden, painted white, with little flowers on the sides. It looked handmade, probably something she'd picked up at a garage sale. I went to the kitchen and found it positioned in front of the sink, which was already full of lunch dishes, breakfast bowls, coffee mugs with dried rings at the bottom. From now on, Mom said, following me into the kitchen, dish duty is yours. You're old enough now to help out more around here. What about Lucas? Lucas is a boy, she said, like that explained everything. Boys aren't naturally good at these things. You're supposed to help more. I climbed onto the steps tool. The sink was deeper than I'd realized, and I had to lean forward to reach the dishes at the bottom. The water was lukewarm and greasy, with bits of food floating on the surface. I picked up the first plate, one of the heavy ceramic ones that Dad had bought Mom for their anniversary, and started scrubbing. Every day after that, the routine was the same. I'd come home from school, Lucas would already be on the couch. Or in his room, and the sink would be waiting. Breakfast dishes, lunch plates, coffee mugs, whatever Mom had used while cooking dinner. My homework could wait. The dishes couldn't. I remember the day I cut my hand on a broken mug. I was 13, watching the aftermath of Lucas's birthday party, his 14th, another celebration where I'd been the help instead of the guest. The mug had a hairline crack I hadn't noticed, and when I squeezed the sponge inside it, the handle broke off, slicing across my palm, blood mixed with dishwater, turning it pink. I wrapped my hand in a paper towel and kept scrubbing, because the dishes weren't going to finish themselves. When I finally showed Mom the cut, she sighed and handed me a Band-Aid from the junk drawer. Be more careful, Daisy. Those mugs were expensive. Not, are you okay, or, let me see how bad it is. Just, be more careful. That night, lying in bed with my bandaged hand throbbing, I found an old composition notebook in my desk drawer. The kind they sold at the dollar store, with a black and white cover that looked like a cow. I opened it to the first page and wrote the date. Then I started listing everything I'd done that day. Made breakfast for 4 people. Packed Lucas's lunch. Washed the morning dishes. Came home from school. Washed the lunch dishes. Helped with dinner prep. Served dinner. Washed the dinner dishes. Cleaned the kitchen. Swept the floor. Beside each task, I wrote how long it took. At the bottom of the page, I added it up. 4 hours and 23 minutes. Almost a part-time job, except I didn't get paid the next day. I added more. The day after that, more still. Weeks turned into months, turned into years of documentation. My first record of their contempt. My first proof of my silence. A catalog of everything I gave and everything they took. Even then, I knew how to keep score. Dad fell down the basement stairs on a Tuesday in March when I was 28. I got the call at my office job downtown, data entry for an insurance company, nothing glamorous, but it was mine. Mom's voice was shaky on the phone, higher pitched than usual. He broke his hip, she said. The doctors say he'll need help for a few months. Physical therapy, getting around the house. I just can't. I'm not strong enough to. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I took family leave, unpaid, because I hadn't been at the company long enough for benefits. Packed 2 suitcases and drove across town to the house I'd grown up in, the house I'd been slowly escaping from for 10 years. Nothing had changed. Same beige carpet in the hallway, worn thin in the spots where we'd walked most. Same family photos. On the mantle, carefully arranged to tell the story of a happy family. Same kitchen table where I'd eaten breakfast before school, done homework while dinner cooked, listened to lectures about being more helpful, more considerate, more like Lucas. The only difference was Dad's hospital bed, rented from a medical supply company and set up in the living room. He looked smaller in it, older than his 67 years, but his voice was the same when he saw me walk in. "Well, look who decided to come home," he said. Not, "Thank you for coming," or, "I'm glad you're here." Just that familiar edge of disappointment. Like I'd taken too long to arrive, I slept on the couch for 3 months. The same plaid couch where I'd watched Saturday morning cartoons as a kid, where I'd pretended to do homework while actually reading library books, where I'd curled up during thunderstorms when I was too old to admit I was scared. Now it was my bed, complete with a pillow that smelled like the same detergent Mom had been using for 20 years and a blanket that was too short to cover my feet. Every morning, I helped Dad to the bathroom. Cooked breakfast for 3 people. Drove him to physical therapy appointments in Mom's car, waiting in plastic chairs while he worked with trainers half his age. Came home and cooked lunch. Helped him with exercises the therapist had assigned. Cooked dinner. Cleaned the kitchen. Loaded his pills into the weekly container. Made sure he had water and the TV remote within reach. Lucas visited twice in 3 months. Both times, he brought a bag of dirty laundry for me to wash. The first time, he stayed for dinner and spent the meal telling Dad about his new job in marketing, how well he was doing, how his boss had mentioned a possible promotion. The second time, he didn't even stay to eat. Just dropped off the laundry. And picked it up the next day, folded and ready to go. "It's so nice having Daisy back," Mom told Mrs. Henderson one afternoon while I was weeding the front flower bed. They were standing on the porch, drinking iced tea, watching me work. "She's always been so good at taking care of things." "You're lucky," Mrs. Henderson replied. "Not many daughters would give up their own lives like that." "Oh, she doesn't mind," Mom said. "This is what she's good at." When Dad was finally walking without the cane, when the physical therapist said he didn't need any more appointments, when the hospital bed was picked up and the living room looked normal again, they planned a celebration dinner. Not for me. For Dad's recovery. A family dinner to mark his return to health. I spent all day cooking. Pot roast with vegetables, the way Dad liked it. Mashed potatoes. Dinner rolls from scratch. Apple pie with ice cream for dessert. Set the table with the good dishes, the way I'd learned to do for special occasions. At 6 o'clock, they sat down to eat. Dad at the head of the table, Mom to his right, Lucas across from her. I stood in the kitchen doorway, waiting to be invited to join them. "This looks wonderful, honey," Dad said to Mom. "Thank you for taking such good care of me." Mom smiled. "I'm just glad you're feeling better." They ate and talked and laughed about old memories, inside jokes I wasn't part of. I served and cleared and washed dishes, the same role I'd always played. When Lucas got up to leave, he patted Dad on the shoulder. "Good to have you back on your feet, old man." "Good to be back," Dad replied. Nobody mentioned my 3 months on the couch. Nobody thanked me for the physical therapy drives, the meal preparation, the medication management. Nobody acknowledged that I'd put my life on hold to take care of theirs. "You're just visiting, dear," Mom reminded me when I started to rearrange the medicine cabinet the next morning. "Don't get too comfortable. I can handle it from here." But I'd made copies of the house keys. Learned the alarm code. Memorized their schedules, Dad's coffee at 7, Mom's soap opera at 2, Lucas's Sunday afternoon visits. I'd mapped out their routines, their habits, their vulnerabilities. If I was invisible to them, then nobody would see what I was planning to do. Block 5, the paper trail. The FORGOT. Cleaning out Dad's office was supposed to be my final task before going back to my apartment, my job, my invisible life across town. Mom had been putting it off for months, too overwhelming, she said, so naturally it fell to me. Boxes of old insurance papers, tax returns from the 1980s, warranties for appliances we'd thrown away years ago. I found the family documents in a metal filing cabinet behind his desk. birth certificates, social security cards, marriage license, divorce papers from his first marriage that I'd never known about. And there, in a manila folder labeled house stuff, in Dad's careful handwriting, was the original deed to the property. The paper was yellowed and brittle, dated 1962. But the name at the top wasn't my father's. It was my grandmother's, Rose Margaret Coleman, my mother's mother, who'd died when I was 12. The woman who'd taught me to bake pies, who'd let me sleep in her bed during thunderstorms, who'd always called me her special girl. I read it 3 times before the implications sank in. Grandma Rose had bought this house with her own money, her own name on the mortgage. She'd lived here for 30 years before Dad moved in after marrying Mom. And when she died, the house had been left to her descendants, not specifically to Mom, not specifically to anyone. Just descendants. The transfer documents were in the same folder, but they were incomplete. Signatures missing. Notary seals that looked questionable. The kind of paperwork that someone had rushed through during grief and confusion, the kind that might not hold up if anyone ever bothered to look closely. I took pictures of everything with my phone. Every page, every signature, every official stamp. Then I put the originals back exactly where I'd found them and finished cleaning the office like nothing had happened that weekend. I drove to the county courthouse and requested copies of all property records for the address. Paid the filing fee, waited in plastic chairs, left with a thick envelope of documents that I read 3 times in my car before driving home. The research took me weeks. Evenings at the public library, hunched over law books and property records. Learning about inheritance law and title transfers, and something called adverse possession. I made appointments with lawyers, 3 different ones, until I found Mr. Rodriguez, who specialized in property disputes and had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "This is interesting," he said, spreading my documents across his desk like puzzle pieces. "Your grandmother's original deed is solid. But the transfer to your parents is problematic. Incomplete documentation, questionable signatures, no proper probate process. If someone were to challenge it, what would happen? Legally, you'd have a strong claim to partial ownership. Maybe more than partial, depending on how a judge interprets the inheritance language. Your grandmother's will says descendants, plural. That includes you. Even though I was 12 when she died? Especially because you were 12. Minors' inheritance rights are strongly protected. The fact that you weren't properly represented during the transfer could work in your favor." He quoted me a fee that would take 3 months of my salary. I paid it with money from the mason jar under my bed, money I'd been saving for years without knowing exactly what I was saving for. The paperwork took 6 weeks to file. Quiet legal motions that my parents would never see, requests for title review that wouldn't trigger any notifications. Mr. Rodriguez handled everything discreetly, the way lawyers do when they know their client wants to avoid family drama. On a Thursday in October, I signed papers that made me co-owner of the house where I'd been invisible for 30 years. Not just a resident, not just a visitor, but an actual owner with legal rights and decision-making power. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house was never really theirs to begin with. I was just taking back what had always been mine. Lucas wanted to add a deck last spring. He'd been talking about it for months, how a deck would increase the property value, how Dad deserved a nice outdoor space for his retirement, how he'd found a contractor who could do the whole project for under $15,000. He'd even drawn up plans on graph paper, measuring the backyard, marking where the posts would go. "It'll be perfect for barbecues," he told Dad over Sunday dinner. "Remember how you used to grill every weekend when I was a kid?" Dad had never grilled every weekend. That was one of Lucas's revised memories, the kind he specialized in. But Dad nodded along, clearly pleased with the idea of himself as a backyard barbecue king. "Sounds like a good investment," he said. "When can we get started?" The contractor came out the following week. Jim something or other, a man in his 50s who drove a pickup truck covered in construction company magnets. He walked around the backyard with Lucas and Dad, pointing at different spots, talking. About load-bearing requirements and permit processes, that's when things got complicated. I'll need owner permission for the building permits, Jim explained, pulling a folder from his truck. Standard procedure. Just need all property owners to sign off on the construction. That's no problem, Dad said. It's my house. Jim handed him a form. I'll also need the other owner's signature. Dad stared at the paper. Other owner. According to county records, there are 2 names on the deed. David Coleman and Daisy Coleman. Both signatures required for any structural modifications. I was in the kitchen when they came inside, making coffee for their meeting, listening to every word through the screen door. Dad's voice when he called my name had an edge I'd never heard before, confusion mixed with something sharper. Daisy, can you come here a minute? I walked into the living room carrying a tray of coffee cups, the same hostess routine I'd perfected over decades. Jim was sitting on the couch, paperwork spread across the coffee table. Dad and Lucas were standing by the window, looking like they'd just discovered something unpleasant. There seems to be some confusion about the property ownership, Dad said. Carefully. This gentleman says your name is on the deed. I set down the coffee tray and looked at the paperwork. That's correct. The silence that followed was different from the usual silences in that house. This one had weight to it, pressure, like the air before a thunderstorm. How is your name on the deed? Lucas asked. Grandma Rose left the house to her descendants when she died. I'm a descendant. But we've been living here for 25 years, Mom said from the kitchen doorway, where she'd been eavesdropping. Yes, you have. And I've never interfered with that. Interfered? Dad's voice was getting louder. This is my house. I built this family. I pay the mortgage. Actually, the mortgage had been paid off in 1987, 3 years before Grandma Rose died. But I didn't correct him. I'm afraid I can't approve the deck construction, I said instead. It's not a good use of the property. Jim gathered his paperwork quickly, the way contractors do when they sense family drama brewing. I'll let you folks work this out and call me when you're ready to proceed. After he left, the 3 of them stared at me like I'd just announced I was from Mars. Mom was twisting her hands in her apron. Lucas was running his fingers through his hair, the way he did when he was trying to solve a problem. Dad was just standing there, speechless for maybe the first time in his life. This is ridiculous, Lucas finally said. You can't just claim ownership of a house you don't even live in. I'm not claiming anything. I'm exercising my legal rights as co-owner. Co-owner? Dad's voice cracked on the words. Actually, majority owner. The legal review showed that I'm entitled to 75% ownership based on the inheritance structure and the length of time I contributed to the household. That wasn't entirely true, the percentage was still being determined, but they didn't need to know the specifics. The deck was never built. The permits were never filed. Lucas blamed government bureaucracy, complained about property law being too complicated, too unfair to families. Dad started talking about selling the house and moving to a retirement community in Florida, but they never followed through on that threat. Because deep down, they knew they had nowhere else to go. And I knew they knew the house had always been mine. I was just tired of pretending otherwise. I drive by the house sometimes, usually on Sundays when I know they're inside watching football or eating the leftovers from whatever meal Mom managed to put together. The grass needs cutting, it's getting shaggy around the edges, the way it used to before I moved back in to take care of Dad. The shutters need paint, and there's a loose board on the front porch that's been hanging crooked for months. They never learned how to take care of anything. They always had me. Last week, I saw Mom struggling with grocery bags on the front steps. She looked older than her 68 years, moving slower than I remembered, her hair more gray than brown now. The bags were heavy, she'd clearly overbought again, the way she did when she was feeling overwhelmed. One of them tore as she tried to lift it, sending cans rolling across the walkway. I was stopped at the red light, half a block away, watching her chase Campbell's soup cans and boxes of crackers. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the old instinct to pull over, to help, to fix whatever needed fixing. My hand was actually on the turn signal when the light changed. Instead, I drove straight through the intersection, windows up, music playing. The same silence I'd lived in for decades, but now it was my choice to make. They still live there. All three of them, though Lucas has been talking about getting his own place for 2 years without actually doing anything about it. They still think it's their house, even though they get monthly bills from Progressive Property Management now. Bills for maintenance, utilities, property taxes, all the costs they never thought about when they assumed ownership was permanent. Mom called me once to complain about the management company. "They're charging us rent," she said, her voice tight with indignation. "In our own house. It doesn't make sense." "Property management fees are standard when ownership is transferred," I told her. "It's all legal. But we've lived here for 25 years. "Yes, you have. And now you're paying market rate for the privilege." She hung up on me. Haven't heard from any of them since. The monthly payments are automatically deposited into an account I opened specifically for this purpose. Not my regular checking account, I don't want their money mixed with mine. This is separate, clean, a transaction that has nothing to do with family and everything to do with business. Every month, they pay $1,200 to live in the house where they raised me to be invisible. Every month, that money goes toward the graduate degree I'm finally pursuing at 33, the counseling program I should have started years ago. Every month, their rent pays for my future. They called me a poor maid who didn't have anything else going on. So I kept the house and started charging for the service. Sometimes I wonder if they've figured it out yet, if they've connected the dots between my name on the deed and Progressive Property Management, between their monthly rent payments and my sudden financial stability. But I don't think they have. They're not particularly curious about how things work when those things don't directly benefit them. And honestly, it doesn't matter if they know or not. The contracts are signed, the payments are current, and the law is on my side. Their opinion of me stopped matching the day I realized I didn't need their approval to exist. If this story reminds you of someone you know, maybe yourself, subscribe. Around here, silence pays the bills, and sometimes that's the only justice we get.